All right, new tutorial for the Vertex lighting. I know a lot of people are mainly interested in that, so that's what I'm going to try and focus on in this video. This is an asset library for more than just Vertex lighting. There's also a couple of things just that for my own in-house development. You can ignore those. Those probably won't be useful, but it's a lot easier to manage one asset library, so that's why those are there. First step, this is a asset library. It is not a Python add-on. To install it, you're going to download the zip file, open the zip file, and extract the folder. Put this folder in some place where you have your assets, basically packs of objects from other people. To install it in Blender, go to File, Preferences, down at the bottom, File Paths, you're going to hit the little plus. And then if I go to my home folder, Downloads, this is where it is. You select the folder, you do Add Asset Library. I already have this filed away. I'm not going to do this because that'll add duplicates. But after that, make sure you save your preferences. And now it's installed. Inside that folder, there's this file, which has everything in it, some information, and then also a test scene. I'm trying to blast through this stuff too because there's a lot of information here and I don't want to waste your time. Okay, so brand new file. Going to go to Asset Browser and Itera's N64 Tools. There's two categories, N64 and then the Vertex lighting that everyone wants to is mainly focused on that. Now, I have done my best to make this a drop-in solution for Vertex lighting. I have tried to also add Gouraud shading. I'm still learning. Gouraud shading might not be entirely accurate, but this is a free tool that I'm letting other people use. All I'm asking for is attribution. This should be as simple as get the geometry node, drag it onto the object that you want lit. It'll add a collection of lights. Any lights you want to add, you just make sure you select the collection that you want to add the lights to, and then you can just drag in the light objects. Let's get this thing lit though. I'm going to go in and, well, actually, just as an example, I'm going to duplicate this object because we're going to set up two different ways of doing this. There is a sample material, and that is right here. I'm going to drag that on. This works in cycles and in Eevee. And right now you can see it's already catching light if my cursor doesn't jump around. To set up a blank material that does this, if I go to my shading, this is the example material that I've made. All you need to do is plug a texture into this master shader, VL2 lighting shader. It'll give a shader output if you want to do RGB output for basically shader to RGB, which does not exist in cycles. This is a way of getting an effect like that, or just the regular, like just the lighting data itself. You can also have that. So if you want to make your own shaders, great. To set up on this, so this is the duplicate of the cube that has the modifier on it. I'm going to get rid of the principled BSDF. Going to add, if I come down here to vertex lighting, there's the VL2 shader. Put the pin there. We're done, or it's at least working. You don't have to make any attributes on your models anymore. All you have to do to get started is just point the geometry node modifier, which is just in your modifier stack, to the collection of lights. Then if you want whatever flat shaded stuff, there you go. I have included the ability to do transparency. There's two-sided shading, which go over that later, and backface culling built into the node. You can still use the old one. And then if you do want to use garage shading, there's a specular factor override here. All right, let's go back and let's do a scene. So I'm going to get rid of everything. And I have a test scene under Nintendo 64 meshes. Bam. So this thing is this tool is meant for doing animations. So there are double-sided light-catching materials. That does not really bake for doing normal, like if you're making a level for a game, that doesn't really bake. You can, but you got to make your own shader to actually get that data and use it. If I select the level, and this is in the modifier stack. By the way, you need to be comfortable using the modifier stack and the outliner to use this tool. It will not catch light from the normal Blender lights. In the output attributes, there's two-sided, and then the front side and the back side, which again, I've already made a master shader to do that. Feel free to dig into that if you want to try and recreate it in a game. But your game engine needs to be able to have 3 color attributes, which normally they only have 1. I have UV baking for Unreal Engine doing basic, but for most purposes, this is fine. What's set up here? Okay, part 2, actually using the lights. So first thing, the wires on the lights are difficult to see. I cannot make it anything other than the default wire color when you import it, but I have set up custom wire colors. You just need to enable them. Up here in these view settings, if you do the little drop down and change the wire color from theme to object, I have chosen magenta because that is just generally easier for me to see on top of black or on top of white, depending on whatever the background is. But you can also change it to random, whatever you want to do. Now, this works. These are not empties. These are 2 sets of geometry nodes that communicate data to each other, and then it passes data to the material shader. The settings for anything you want to have lit, you have to have this geometry node on it. I have been able to set up menus for different kinds of shading. There's flat shading, smooth shading, and then if you're working on a big scene or a level, so the way that geometry nodes works is it's on the CPU. There's nothing I can do to change that. If you move something around, whether it be a light or a piece of the geometry, it recalculates everything. Now, if you have a small amount of lights, that's fine. If you have a massive amount of lights, it can make the computer lag. Changing it to full bright allows you to see everything, make whatever changes you want, and then when you're done, you set it back to whatever shading model you want. There is a reflection model. Diffuse is just the normal. Gouraud is the approximation of Gouraud shading, which is like a specular reflection. You don't have to use it. The Gouraud shading right now, I don't have that set to bake. I mean, it'll bake in the model, but you got to go pull that data out yourself. There isn't it's a work in progress, and I'm not sure how useful that will actually be. The last version of this tool I made, I spent a lot of time in making things that I probably didn't have to make. but you can change how shiny it is. Garage shading, woo. Now, underneath that, the light collection. You can make multiple light collections. You can have multiple light catching light catching objects point to the same or different light groups. You can get the lights in inside a light group and link them to multiple. It's just normal Blender collections. Anything you put into the collection, the object is going or the geometry node is going to reference those and pull the data from those lights. Environment. This is the baked environment color. You can paint on this. This is just a vertex color. You hit this little thing. You can make a vertex color, paint it. Same with if you want to do a lighten pass or a darken pass for manually correcting these things. These are compatible, or they should be compatible with face corners, so you can make sharp shadows if you want to. Down here is some of the baking settings. UV baking, that's just what I use for Unreal because I use some line traces to get some of this data. There might be a better way of doing that. That's just what I've ended up doing. So that is there if you want to bake your vertex colors to UV channels instead of using a vertex color. And then here's the normal attributes that you can fill in with whatever you want. And there you go. Everything just goes into the color attributes or the UV attributes. Now for the lights. Let's actually, as an example, let's get rid of everything. Just move it out of the collection. Oh, and now only one thing is showing up and for casting light. Okay. Where's this one? That one. It's not needed for this. Okay, so now the light. There's a couple different kinds of shadows. New feature. This is not accurate to the time period, but it's pretty handy. There's ray traced shadows. This is expensive. It's probably not good to have everything in the scene be ray traced. What is going on? Oh, that is the wrong light. That's why. Okay. My mistake. Using the same demo file with multiple things. So there's only one light object now. You have a spotlight, point light, you can set the color on that light. You can make multiple of them. Shift duplicate works pretty great. There is some retro lights, which can work with scaling. So you can make just like a long light, either box or sphere. And then if you're just using this to paint attributes, there are fill lights, which I've tried to just keep as uniform as possible. For the fill lights, though, they work the best if you change the shadow type to none. So it just fills in everything that's inside. For the different kinds of shadows. Oh, what did I do? There we go. None is it just shines through. Dot shadows. This is a old cheat for retro lighting. This is what you would most likely do if you're trying to be accurate to the time period. This is a calculation of basically if the normal of the face is pointing towards the light, it is lit up. If it is not pointing towards the light, it is not lit up, as if it were on like the back face of the teapot, and that they're not lit up because they're facing away from the light source. You can make multiple again, and it combines all of the lights using a light and mix. And then again, there is ray tracing. Get both of those. Oops. Change both of these to ray traced. And again, this one is the most expensive, but it works. Other things. Another thing that is not really accurate to the time period, but just an artistic tool. There's an attribute blur, so you can soften the shadows. This is also really expensive. If you put this to like 500 something, your computer's gonna lag. The Blender might crash if you put this too high. The power, normal, light power. Now, fall off override. If you want to sharpen the edges of a light, like this is just adding to a light. It's just adding to the color. Oh yeah, and then for the spotlight, the math is now correct and the gizmo actually tracks. So there's a spotlight fee. I've also included some effects. You can do 3D noise. This is good for breaking up the color. Be careful with this one. This effect is best subtle. So there's 3D noise for color, and then there's 3D noise for value. You can also, like on the color one, this is 4D noise. So if you were to put frame to get the current frame counter, and then let's say times 0.1, if I was to play it, I can cycle through. So this is I've used this before to, like, if there's a whole bunch of pictures of like buildings in the background, to like make it look like the lights are kind of shifting inside of them. But again, this effect is best done subtly. All right, final part. Basically, the lights have been covered. Sorry if some of that was a mess. I'm still learning to do public speaking. Now for the N64 fans. Of course, there's the test scene here. I have included some different nodes to help you recreate some of the different effects on the Nintendo 64, including tri-point filtering, matte cap reflections, some other kinds of coordinate manipulations. But as an example, matte cap metal reflections. Let's go to the shading editor. How this works, if you want to use some of these, N64, not the in-house tools, but I've marked all of the coordinate manipulations with chord. So latitude, longitude textures are HDRI textures. You can go out and you can take your own photos of those. But I've got a latitude, longitude reflection. So this is basically it's like the Metal Mario, but instead of using a matte cap texture, you could use a full HDRI. That works. Latitude, longitude, sky mapping. Oh, let me go apply that, just because that was something that I did earlier. Let's change it. I've included this sky material. This is just a normal HDRI that I rendered out. It kind of breaks when you look really far up, but there isn't much that I can do to keep the tri-point filtering working when the way the texture works is to stretch it to make it spherical. But also we got tri-point filtering, which is a flawed linear filtering used on old SGI things as seen on the Nintendo 64. Uh, this one is good for game dev, just for getting an idea. I wouldn't really recommend using this rendering because this is easy to set up. It's only one texture you have to do. This is accurate or more accurate, but it requires 4. Let's go to this thing, shading. Oh, I think I screwed this up. Well, I guess this is a good, this was just an example, but this is a good, yeah, I screwed this up. We're going to turn this into actual Nintendo 64, and I'm going to see about re-uploading the, oops. We're going to see about re-uploading the library. So it's going to be, build version 114 instead of 113. So to get one of your textures and turn it into a Nintendo 64, here, let me just join that. Okay. Make a new node, N64, nodes, tri-point part A, coordinates, N64, nodes, tri-point part B, color mixing. The top noodle, you got to link these together. And then your texture, you have to make sure it's set to closest. This will not work if you have any other sort of interpolation. You'll get visual bugs. So make sure the interpolation is set to closest. But once you have that, I'm going to make 4 of my textures. UVA to this one, B, C, D, and then color, alpha, color, alpha, color. You get it. Now, when Blender finally allows you to pass texture references, this will end up being one node, but right now there isn't any way for me around to get around this. That and there's no way for me to ask Blender, how big is this texture? Without making a full Python add-on and making it so that this isn't just a drop-in and it'll work in anyone's project without installing a whole bunch of stuff. So you do have to put in the resolution for the texture. In this case, so normal UV coordinates will work, but we're going to plug in the matte cap. This is already a 64 by 64 texture, so that should work. And let's see if this works or if the demo breaks. Oh, looks like it works. Looks like my little preview thing doesn't work though. Let's zoom in. Yeah, that's working. Let's do a normal, just to kind of prove that it's working. UV map. And let's change this also from a tinged petal to just normal. Yeah. But basically, put whatever texture you want in here. You can just directly hook up to it if you just want a full bright N64 texture filtering. But here's my shader that will grab it and you get light. But matte cap reflections. Okay, I am inserting this in the middle of the recording, even though I'm recording this at the end. A couple of things that I forgot that are very important if you're trying to go for the retro look. Blender's default color transforms are not correct for doing retro content. They are made to emulate film and some of the flaws in film. So to correct this, we go to Render, all the way down, Color Management, and the View Transform, you need to change it from AGX or well, this is only for newer versions of Blender, so it'll be defaulted to AGX unless you've changed it. Change that to sRG or standard, which is sRGB. And then also, if you are using, like, you can use Eevee. Some of the materials are set up, like the node can do like mirror reflections with cycles. This actually works really well in cycles. Let's change it over to cycles. Depending on your GPU, you might get better performance in cycles, surprisingly enough. If you have no lights in your scene, you'd be surprised how well cycles works. In fact, let's change the sample count to 1 for both the view and that. And then if you go to your light paths and change each sample to only 1 pass. Diffuse, we don't need anything. Glossy is for reflection, so I'm going to put 1. Transmission, I don't need anything because it's not transmission anything. Volume, we're not using any volume. And then transparent is what you need for doing transparency, like a fence or something like that. Set that to 1. This is real-time cycles with a light that I'm going to change it back to object. This is real-time cycles, retro lighting. Now on to the next part. I've included a couple of materials to act as a base. If you're doing the N64, you can just drag and drop one of these onto your object, make a copy of the material, rename it, just plug in your texture. Again, I have made the let's go back to shading. If you go grab the asset library, 64. Oh wait, it's under lighting because it's related to lighting. You can drag and drop the node in there. This is your retro equivalent of the principled BSDF, but since it's not a BSDF, that's what it is. I am planning on updating this. Right now, this is Blender 4.2 exclusive. The geometry node setup is quite extensive, and since they have included matrix transformations, it made things way easier. But yeah, I'm no longer going to be supporting Blender 4.1. This the old lighting system is planned on being decrepit. But yeah, I hope to see a lot more retro content, and maybe someday doing this stuff will help land me a job to pay the bills. Praise God, this should be done. This took way longer than I intended, and I need to get back to working on other things. If you have any questions, I guess leave me questions in the comments, and you have a blessed day.